Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to uh, the Q4 review of what's new in ITOM and Cloud Accelerate. We're just going to give folks a couple seconds to hop on. So we'll start at about 3 after the hour. I'm going to go ahead and play some song while we're waiting. Okay, we'll get started in about 2 minutes. Give people some time to join. I didn't realize you couldn't hear the music. So one more minute and we'll get started. All right, it's 3 after. Let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to go ahead and end the Fugazi. All right, welcome everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're from. Thanks for joining. This is a review of what's new in the ITOM Visibility and Cloud Accelerate for the Q4 store release, Q4 2025. We're doing this a little bit late. The store release was in December of last year, and just due to timing, we kind of had to push this review out to March. But let's hop into it, and I apologize if there's any background noise. I'm actually in the airport here in St. Louis waiting for my flight. So I hope that it's not too bad. So let's get into it. Oh, actually, that slide's a little bit out of place. Just wanted to let you know, I'll go back to that other slide, but just let you know that we do have ServiceNow Exchange, the Live on ServiceNow interactive series. You can see the schedule by scanning this QR code, and I believe John's going to paste something in the chat if you want to hop to it via hyperlink. And you can see, all of the different Live on ServiceNow, ServiceNow Exchange events across the platform, whether it's ITOM, other TX workflow solutions, etc. So hop on in, and if you haven't registered, you can register through that QR code. And just a little bit of housekeeping, we are saving time for Q&A. So please use the Q&A feature inside of Zoom to ask any questions, and we'll get those answered as quickly as possible. This is being recorded, and the presentation and the recording will be shared out on the community page. And then after the event, you'll be prompted to fill out a short survey. We appreciate your feedback. Please let us know how we did, what you thought of the materials, the speakers, and anything, that you would like to hear about in the future. Quick introductions. My name's Derek Kitzelman. I'm an outbound product manager in the ITOM business unit, and I'm here with John Mario. Go ahead.
Thank you, Derek. Hi, everyone. John Mario De Luigi here. Very excited to show you the latest and greatest as of Q4 store release. Back over to you, Derek.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, John. Safe harbor. I mean, we're not planning on talking about any forward-looking statements, but if we do, just understand that, anything that we talk about around future functionality is based on a plan. Plans change, so please don't make any investment or purchasing decisions based off of forward-looking statements. Okay, now I'm going to go back real quick and just the product evolution, right? So what we are referencing is the Zurich store release for Q3 2025, and it looks like I didn't update this. Apology. Oh, there it is. Yes. So, we have been making considerable investments in ITOM visibility, and John will review the Cloud Accelerate um, product evolution as well. But we're really going to focus on, the value in the ITOM infrastructure services, and a couple AI agents, and some other features here. So let me get back, and let's get to the agenda. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about what's new in ITOM Cloud Visibility, and then what's new in ITOM Cloud Accelerate. And John's going to take on that portion of it. And we will have demos as well for the features that we're reviewing. So let's hop into visibility features for Q4 2025. So some major enhancements. I'm not really going to drain this, but we've made some investments in a new workspace to be able to manage mid-servers and agent client collector deployments. So a centralized workspace that is accessible for, discovery admins, agent client collector admins, and platform admins. So anybody who needs a mid-server and anybody who manages agent client collector deployments. So nice streamlined workspace. So this is a brand new workspace for managing mid servers and agent client collector. And then we have two new AI agents. So we have the mid server guardian agent, and it's a diagnostics agent for troubleshooting mid server issues. And then we have that similar diagnostics agent for agent client collector, so you can engage and help walk through troubleshooting steps. And provide guided steps for resolving issues with either the mid-server or agent client collector. They are two different agents, though. And then we have introduced Alibaba Cloud Discovery. So if you have resources stood up in Alibaba, now we have patterns to discover those IaaS resources. And then we included in the October release, which was separate from the December release, a new guided setup for discovery, for setting up discovery, new implementations of discovery, or setting up new discovery schedules, and we'll review that as well. And then some of the minor features or other features and enhancements. We have an agent client collector framework upgrade without a mid server. So if you're using the ITOM cloud services, you can now upgrade agent client collector framework, right? So upgrading the framework with those agents that are reporting up through the ITOM cloud services. So those agents that are not reporting directly to a mid server, right? So this really, if you're leveraging the upgrade feature inside of the platform, now you can do that. You can leverage that upgrade feature even for agents that aren't reporting to a mid server. So pretty cool. We updated OS Query to 5.81, so there's some improved security and performance enhancements there with the OS Query upgrade. And then we've included a new comprehensive error framework, including categorization, logging, and details for agent client collector. So really it's about being able to get more granular details around the errors, access to better logging, and really ultimately leveraging those to quickly resolve agent client collector. And then, of course, with the agent, you'll be able to tap in the diagnostics agents taps into that new framework as well. And then we've got some new patterns that we've released. So 24 new AWS resource patterns, 10 new Azure resource patterns. We updated the Nutanix pattern to use the V4 API, and then support for OCI Cloud, and then some other some storage updates, around capacity standardization. So ultimately, being able to have a more complete and accurate CMDB. Okay, so let's jump into the ITOM content services, and I'm going to cover the ITOM content services, the diagnostics agent for ACC, and the mid guardian agent, and then I'll hop into an instance and demo those all together, right? So brand new workspace. It's called the ITOM Infrastructure Services Workspace. It is available as a store app for downloading. Um, and with this new workspace, and this is kind of an incomplete screenshot. You'll see when I get into the demo, there's also a third icon here. You got the workspace experience. You can come in here and see, your mid servers, any of them that are down, those that need validation, any errors with mid servers, then usage categories you can download from here. You can quickly get to documentation, videos, community articles related to the mid server, and then we've got a high level list of the number of agents, how many are down and stopped, and then you can either jump in by managing mid servers or over here, right? So really, moving the capabilities that have only existed in the left nav and what's called the UI 16 legacy experience, and then migrating that to the workspace experience, right? And then, we will continue to add capabilities and bring, capabilities that didn't make it in the initial release into the workspace in future releases. So ultimately, we get to an instance where the workspace experience is in parity with the left nav experience. So centralized workspace space for managing mid servers and agent client collector deployments. And access to this is dependent on, and what you have access is dependent on roles, right? So if you're a discovery admin or a platform admin, but you don't have access to ACC, you would only see, mid servers. And likewise, if you potentially only have access to ACCs, you may not see mid servers. So it is role dependent there. Next one I want to talk about is the mid server guardian AI agent. So this agent is accessible right now through the Now Assist panel. So once you click on the Now Assist panel, you can type in mid guardian. You can actually say mid diagnostics and then put the mid server. There's several ways that you can engage the mid guardian agent. And what it will do is it will provide you with certain scenarios that it can do troubleshooting. So whether that's troubleshooting or resolving key store issues, network issues, upgrade issues, etc. And then there's other catch-alls that if we don't have a conversation or a guided troubleshooting process for something, it will go out and look for relevant KB articles and present those back to you, right? So really helping you identify and resolve issues with mid servers really quick. And then agent client collector diagnostics agent, similarly access through the Now Assist panel. And then you can type in ACC diagnostics, and then that will engage the agent, and then you can enter in an agent name, agent ID, SysID, et cetera, and go through and start troubleshooting and run diagnostics against the agent. And this agent, as I mentioned, it is using the new error framework for identifying issues and resolving those quickly. All right, so let's jump over to an instance, and I'm just in one of my employee instances here where I've got some infrastructure stood up, and I'm just going to come over here to the workspaces experience. And of course, it is available in the left nav if you prefer to use that. But to access it, you can just come into workspaces and click on ITOM infrastructure services. So here, and if I come in to the overview, here I can download a mid server. I can get to quick documentation. I can see number of mid servers, how many are down, any that have any validation challenges, and mid servers with issues, and similar with agent client collector. So here, if I want, I can either access it by jumping into manage mid servers, or I can come over here and click here. Now I've got a list of the different mid servers. I can see I've got couple in AWS, one in GCP, one in a lab environment on-prem here. And I can see the status. Are they validated? Any issues, right? And then also I could choose one, something here. I could select validate, rekey, pause, restart, upgrade. So I've got quick actions there. Um, and then of course I can jump into each one of those records. And then here I've got quick access to downloads. So downloading the MSI for Windows, and then the RPM or the deb for Linux installations, and then installing the installation documentation and quick learning here. And then here I can also quickly get into uh, the uh, the, uh, the documentation for installation. So if I come in here and I click on a mid server, I see an overview. I've got an unresolved issue here. You know, so I'm just going to close that real quick. And, I can see ECCQ here. Of course, I have those similar quick server actions that were in the related list on the left nav. And then, I can see CPU utilization, memory utilization. I can see the status. I can see any unresolved issues. And then I can jump in, see, all of the details that are relevant for that particular mid server. And then I can come in here and, I have quick access to properties. I can add new properties. I can come in here and edit new properties, similar with parameters, capabilities. I can manage capabilities, my IP ranges, supported applications. I can manage clusters, extension context, so on and so forth. Right. And then, I can see mid server issues, statistics, right? All of those details and get the logs. So pretty comprehensive for the first version of this. And then, of course, if I wanted to start troubleshooting, and I'm not going to kick off the Now Assist here just because it is a little time consuming. So I don't want to do that, but I do have a conversation that I actually engaged beforehand. So in this particular instance, I just said mid Guardian agent, and then I referenced a particular mid server, and then walks through using the Guardian, creating the PAN. Is this the correct mid server? Yes. And then it presented me with a list of what capability or issue would you like to troubleshoot. So in this one, I said key store issues. There wasn't any, but then it goes and it runs through and it says, hey, there are no key store issues, right? And then it says, okay, is there anything else that you want to look at? And I said, yes. So then it just runs through a diagnostics to look and see if it can find any other issues. And it goes through and talked about some configuration guidance, addressing common issues, etc. So, yeah. So that is, the mid server Guardian. And if I were to do this again, let's do this just to show you mid Guardian. Guardian. Can I spell? And then Crucible. And just to kind of walk you through it, I think we got enough time here using the Guardian. And then, it goes through and it runs through some information. It's creating a plan. Please confirm. And I'll just say Crucible. Yeah, I should have. And so, 1, 2, 3. So then now it's going to present me with a list, as it processes it. Okay, what would you like to troubleshoot? And it'll give me, some specific options here. Please specify the capability that you would like to issue. And I'll just say, and then it's just going to go through and walk me through, analyze some of the things, and then basically go out and say, okay, can I resolve this, or do I need to present you with a KB article to help resolve that? So while that's going through, I'm going to come over and just really quickly here, close that out and come over here and then show you the agent client collector workspace. So here, or the portion of the workspace that's specific to agent client collector. So I've got some high level details, number of agents, agents with errors, what versions, so I can see the details of the versions. And I can come over here and I can see a list. And then here I can come in and jump into the different agents, and similar to what you saw on the left nav, I've got the details here. So I can see, actions. If I wanted to go ahead and upgrade this, I could look at what checks that are running on here, and if there are any checks and any error agents. And then similarly, I could start a new conversation here, and then run through the diagnostics for that. So once again, just kind of engage the agent here, say, can you run diagnostics on a given agent? It walks through and does the diagnostics, and then tells me no errors were found. Is there anything else though? So, very, very initial version of what the agents can do around diagnostics, troubleshooting, resolving issues like key stores, things like that. And then, as we mature this solution, we'll provide additional capabilities to go out and, restart the agent through the Now Assist panel, et cetera. Okay. All right, John, are there any questions that I need to field related to those?
I think we're good for now, actually, Derek. We can keep
Okay,
going.
perfect.
And I
All
will
right.
remind everyone that hasn't submitted a question yet to please check for the Q&A box, and we'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay. So the next major feature I wanted to talk about is Alibaba Cloud. So we do have discovery patterns for discovering IaaS resources, networks, data centers, regions, et cetera, for Alibaba Cloud. We realize that this is becoming more and more prevalent, and companies are using it, or companies that maybe in China and operating in China and leveraging Alibaba Cloud in China, and need to discover the infrastructure that they're standing up in Alibaba Cloud. So we created new patterns, and then initially it's just doing IaaS. And then as we go in future releases, we'll include PaaS resources, databases, AI capabilities, et cetera, right? So we'll expand out our functionality here. And just a quick look of, the resources that we've included, right? So availability zones, the hardware types of Cloud OS, the data centers, image tags, service account tags, service account validation, API and API version, the volumes, storage volume, virtual machines, and VM, virtual machine tags. So those are the resources that we are supporting in this initial release. And then, as we build out, we'll support additional capabilities with that. Not much to demonstrate there. I don't have access to Alibaba Cloud, so I can't really show you on an environment there. So I'm going to hop into the last feature from the Q4 2025 release for ITOM visibility, and that's the discovery guided setup. So this was actually released in October. And this is, we've had guided setups before. This is a re-engineered guided setup based off of, the years that we've been working with customers and partners, et cetera, and identifying, best practices for walking through discovery, setting it up. And not only are we walking through the steps, but also doing some knowledge building in the initial parts of the guided setup to really help the person who is going to be responsible for implementing. Hey, what is discovery, right? What are the basic attributes, and incorporating that learning phase, and then breaking it down into crawl, walk, run, and then fly, right? So it really just helping that individual build out those discovery schedules in a more meaningful and frictionless manner, right? And with learning along the way. So that was my end. Let me just, from a deck perspective, let me just come in here, and I'm just going to do guided setup. And you'll notice we still have the legacy here, but under here we've got discovery guidance setup and safe harbor. We do have access to be able to initiate guided setup. This didn't come out in October, but I got a little bit early access, but you can actually access the guided setup inside the Discovery admin workspace. But just to kind of go back to what was released in October, I'm going to click on here, guided setup. And then here I can, I've done a couple here. So now I can start a new configuration. And I'm just going to say, what's new demo here? This is something. And then click on next. I'm going to move that little control out of the way. And so, that this is, you may be going through a process, and let's say you have to step away and, you want to be able to restart the process. That's why we create a configuration. Let's say you want to walk through it for, let's say, one data center or one specific subnet or one mid-server implementation. You can have multiple configurations of it, and as you leave for the day, maybe you didn't get through the full setup, you can pick up of that setup and from where you left off, right? So, what is discovery? What is IP-based discovery? So this is just kind of walking you through, what discovery is, why discovery, how it enhances, other workflows, real world benefits. So it's really just kind of helping the implementer understand, hey, why am I doing this, right? To help them learn more, right? And then as you mark complete, you go on to the next step, right? So, from the learn, you've got what is IP-based, what is cloud, common issues. I'm going to go ahead and, cloud discovery, mark all of these complete, different common use cases, quick access to best practice guides, documentations, quick access to the ITOM community hub, the CMDB, access to learning on, and then events, and then in videos, right? And then now let's go ahead and start setting up. So now we've got a video here. Let's get the plugin installed. Let's get the appropriate roles so the person can access Discovery Admin Workspace. And then let's add a mid server, right? So, that step-by-step, walking the individual through it so they can be successful at getting Discovery rolled out and working. And then also being able to, have the ability to understand how to do diagnostics and the different capabilities within the Discovery Admin Workspace. So, and of course, I said I wasn't going to talk about future enhancements, but hey, we got a couple seconds. We are looking to leverage, agentic workflows to help kind of move this process along. So as the discovery schedule setup evolves, we'll have agents to be able to go out and help the discovery admin, complete some of those tasks, help with diagnostics, et cetera. So future capabilities coming in. All right, John, any other questions? Any questions? Anything that I can
Yes,
help
we
answer?
do have a question about the list of the new Azure resource patterns. Do we have it handy?
Let me, while you're presenting, I will go out and answer that question.
Perfect.
All right,
Thank
I'm
you
going to go
so
ahead
much.
and hand it over to you.
Yeah, appreciate it, Derek. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. I want to make sure you can see it right.
Yep.
Perfect. Awesome. So let's move on to what's new with Cloud Accelerate as of Q4. We had several very important enhancements that I would like to bring up today, specifically related to Cloud Workspace and Cloud Account Management with the multi-owner support and also the integration of Cloud Security for Cloud Workspace. That's another huge enhancement that has been required by many of you. For those of you that do not know about Cloud Workspace, it's essentially a new concept that we brought together last year in order to unify different products across really the ServiceNow portfolio, the technology workflows portfolio, to essentially help you achieve better outcomes when it comes to compliance, when it comes to inventory with ownership and security insights. Really, that was the mission, and this is exactly what is available as of Q4 store release. Now, I mentioned ownership for a reason. Many of you have asked us to really uh, give you some concrete help in understanding who needs to own not only a dedicated account, which could be a subscription, could be a project, whenever it's, of course, provision based on the different cloud providers, but especially understanding what are the different layers of ownership. And that's why we are introducing the multi-ownership concept, which essentially ensures that in first place, you can nominate, yes, the account owner at again an account level, and you can also propagate that ownership to all the different cloud assets. But more importantly, you have a primary and secondary team ownership that can be defined and we're going to see that in the demo. And that is essentially a logical ownership that you're now assigning to a specific account, which means whenever the owner will potentially either move on to a new organization or just leave the company in general, you'll be able to still identify two logical teams that are responsible for their account. And the two dimensions could be, as an example, FinOps and operations. You decide what is the logical level of ownership, but this would definitely help you ensure that you do have ownership attestation at all times for the accounts, which is a huge enhancement. And the other enhancement that we're going to discuss today is the integration of cloud security within Cloud Workspace. Now, you'll be wondering, is this an ITOM feature necessarily? Well, and you're right if you're asking yourself so, because it's not. It's specifically an integration that we're bringing in from another product. If you're familiar with the SecOps offering, and you possibly will have the either VR Enterprise entitlement or USEM entitlement. And at that point, you will definitely be able to also see this new addition to Cloud Workspace. Now, specifically, you'll be able to understand what are the critical issues that you're bringing in from external tools. And we're talking about security findings from Wiz, Prisma, and Tenable that are being ingested into the ServiceNow platform and now are correlated to the related account and resources. That is huge because you're going to see not only a breakdown of these security findings, but you're also going to have the granularity of the list view of those security findings per account related to the specific CI that is part of that account. That is really transformative, and we're very excited to bring it in for the Q4 again store release. And now I'm gonna change my view and I'm gonna show you how it looks like within the product. Now you should be able to see my screen, and this is I want to make sure we go. I can show you the proper new experience for a cloud workspace. Now, the average, let's say the typical user of Cloud Workspace will be, first of all, a cloud COE or cloud infrastructure leader. We call it governance, a cloud governance leader. or it would be one of the members of those teams. Again, CCOE, cloud infrastructure, cloud governance, that really depends on how you call those. But more importantly, it could be also someone from the discovery or platform team that wants to better understand what is the current inventory of these cloud assets. And that is going to be available already from this very same homepage with a breakdown of cloud versus on-prem assets and a specific indication of all the different cloud accounts and assets across different cloud providers. And then you're going to have more insights about those, specifically related to the ownership, how many accounts are still missing ownership, or how many accounts have dedicated related critical security findings. Now, there is also a more advanced view that tells you how these KPIs are evolving over time, and that is the compliance dashboard. My instance is a little bit slower today, but this is exactly telling you how those KPIs are evolving over time, starting from how many accounts you have across different cloud providers with different trends. You can see the overall trends here from a graphics or a widget perspective across different cloud providers, the ownership insights to see if there are any spikes, or even from a cloud critical security finding, are there any spikes? And in this case, yes, we do have one. And that is going to be exactly what I'm going to show you in a moment. But for now, if you go to the cloud accounts dashboard, if you haven't seen the cloud account management experience yet, this dashboard will provide you with all the different insights per account, and you don't even need to click through them. You can apply all sorts of filters, identify which ones have criticalities or violations. But in this case, we know that we have a specific cloud account with critical security findings that we want to better investigate. Now, the typical user will come here and first of all understand who is owning that account. And in this case, we do have Abel Tutor that is owning that account. The ownership is already automatically being propagated to all the different cloud assets that are part of that account. And with the, again, Q4 store release, we also have two different teams that are responsible for that account. In this case, from a FinOps and operations perspective as per the company's decision, but you will be deciding what is that sort of logical layer of ownership that you'll be setting at the account level. This is definitely going to help you understand whenever you're going to have a transition in ownership, who still needs to manage that account. And I mentioned assets for a purpose. In this case, you can clearly see how many assets are already have been populated, or I would say are related to that very specific account, including virtual machines, functions, really many different assets, and you can filter by region, ownership, etc. So that is a huge value addition from a compliance perspective based on your industry or different rules that you need to obey that are set by regulators, you will need to have that clear vision of what is your current state of resources and what is the ownership level that you have across your different cloud assets. So that is one of the core values, as I mentioned earlier, that cloud account management is bringing to you. Now, we've seen that, and there is more. We just mentioned the integration of the security SecOps module within cloud account management, which means that if you are entitled to SecOps, and specifically you can check with the account teams for the details about that entitlement, but you will automatically see the security findings within Cloud Workspace. So for this means that you will have a breakdown of all the security findings that are indicated based on the level of criticality. And more importantly, you will also have the security findings list. And you can, of course, filter that out based on the risk rating. And more specifically, you can see how many of those are effectively owned by someone. Now, if you click and you want to see more about that very specific security finding, you can find out that yes, in this case, there is a specific resource that is associated and that is part of that account that is associated to this security finding. We don't have an assigned to or an assignment group. In this case, we can just make sure that Abel Tutor, which is the owner of that account, actually owns this specific vulnerability, I would say, or security finding so that they can start investigating more. As a matter of fact, you can start the investigation and that will open up the investigation cycle. You can check for affecting tasks or impacted services, record history. You have all the details in there really that are being brought in. Again, as I said, you can bring in the security findings from Wiz, Tenable, and Prisma. Now, the key value here is that that was an unmanaged security finding. Were clearly able to identify that it was unmanaged. So you proceeded to assign it to the owner, and this is it. Now, Abel, which is the owner of this account, will need to have a closer look at that vulnerability and really verify whether the security team needs to intervene and do further investigations on it, or if it's basically we have a position of having a security finding that can be automatically resolved from the owner itself himself in this case. Now, we did a quick overview to really showcase the new enhancements of Cloud Workspace. I want to make sure that I give some time to you all for any questions. And if you haven't done so, you can always submit your questions in the Q&A box. And if there are no other questions, I would just remind you to please check the chat. I'm going to paste the link again for the ITOM Exchange series, which is specifically related to there's the ITOM Academy in there where you can subscribe to. That is a monthly recurrence where we cover a lot of innovations, but also a lot of leading practices. That is the place for you to go. And with that, I think, Derek, we can wrap this up. And I believe you're.
Alrighty then. Yeah. Sorry about that. Let me just reorganize, working off of one screen. A little challenging here. Okay. So let me share. All right. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So just wanted to call out some of the resources that we have and the QR codes to allow you to quickly access those. Being able to put AI to work faster with our customer success programs. So we've got the impact community that you can access to really, help understand how ServiceNow AI platform can help your business transformation and really get support and expertise and faster track to value. So that's the impact community. Also, we have training and certification on the ServiceNow University. You can go out and enable yourself on any solutions out on that you need to understand how to implement and get value and quick outcomes. And then, of course, we have an expert services team that can really help either you directly or even partner with our partner organization, and you can get more details out on the expert services community as well. So any other questions in the QA? Let me see here. Anything else in the QA? All right, it doesn't look like anything. Greg, I went ahead and posted those Azure resources in response to your question of what new patterns we have. And if there are no other questions, we're going to go ahead and close out this session. We appreciate everybody taking the time to learn about what's new in ITOM. And we look forward to seeing you on our next session. Just to call out, we are doing a part 2 for service mapping on, I want to say it's March 17th. I believe that is the date. It's the third Tuesday of March. So Bill Iflin and I are coming back, and there were several questions that we didn't get to answer in the January session. So we are going to basically build our whole webinar around the questions that were answered, and talk about best practices around those customer questions that we had. Looks like we got a new question in the QA. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Mark. All right, everybody. Look forward to seeing you in future sessions, and hope everybody has an amazing week. And thanks for your participation.
Yeah. Thank you all, and we'll see you soon.